Rhaenyra have actually killed Alicent's children? In House of the Dragon, and to some extent Fire and Blood, it is Otto Hightower's main argument to Alicent when she questions Aegon's right to be king, that Alicent's children and grandchildren would never be allowed to live if Rhaenyra took the throne. There has been a lot of discussion online since House of the Dragon aired about whether or not Rhaenyra would have had her half-siblings killed if she became queen, with some people firmly agreeing she would, while others arguing she clearly would not. But given the very tribal nature of the discussion of the Dance of the Dragons since House of the Dragon aired, it can be hard to really find a balanced and objective answer to this question without people's biases clouding objectivity of the question. In this video, we are going to try and look at this concept objectively and attempt to come up with some kind of conclusion. The issue with this idea of Rhaenyra killing Alicent's children really has one massive key component that needs to be addressed. Would Rhaenyra, as a character, unprovoked, kill her half-siblings or order their deaths? In terms of what we know of her from Fire and Blood, it's quite hard to really come to a conclusion. Given the nature of Fire and Blood being an in-world history book made up of conflicting accounts, we only really get to know the characters on a surface level. We know Rhaenyra and her half-siblings always had a strained relationship, but there isn't really anything solid before the Dance of the Dragons itself breaks out that would indicate she would personally order them killed. In terms of the TV show, the biggest argument I have seen made as to why Alicent would believe Rhaenyra would kill her children comes down to how their relationship and friendship broke down. From Alicent's point of view, her best friend, who she trusted, lied to her and manipulated her to cover her own tracks, especially when it comes to her relationships with Criston Cole and Daemon. Given what we know of Alicent as a character, her beliefs and what drives her, it is not hard to understand how the way in which her trust was broken would feed into this idea that Rhaenyra would harm her children should she become queen, especially given the information her father Otto is feeding her during this time, and how isolated from her family she is about to be as Otto is sent away back to Old Town. Thus, she would now be without the safety net of her father, which could also feed into this concept. When you take all of this into consideration, it's not hard to understand why Alicent might believe this idea. We, as the viewer, have the luxury of observing events from the outside and are privy to events, thoughts and feelings of the other characters and events that aren't seen by others. Thus, given what we learn of Rhaenyra up to this point, I cannot see her ordering the murder of her siblings, personally. But here is the thing, a lot of the online discourse about this subject is overlooking something. The issue is not as simple as Rhaenyra killing Alicent's children to ensure her claim to the throne, which is the interpretation many have run with. But in reality, it's a lot deeper than that. When Otto tells Alicent that should Rhaenyra ever become queen, that her children's life would effectively be forfeit, he is not wrong. In fact, he is 100% correct in this assumption, but not for the reasons you think. He's not necessarily saying Rhaenyra would order their murders. Rather, anyone around her could do it. Simply put, as long as King Viserys had a living, true-born son, Rhaenyra's position would always be in question and always be at risk. Those siding with Rhaenyra know this too. You could not put it past someone, like Daemon for example, not to take matters into his own hands in order to secure Rhaenyra's position and thus his own position. You can say this for any of the lords on Rhaenyra's side. But if Aegon willingly accepts Rhaenyra as queen, why would any of this matter? It's the symbolism. Any true-born son or even grandson of Viserys would forever be a threat to Rhaenyra, even if they had no wish or intent to take the throne. The moment a rebel lord or a foreign power took issue with Rhaenyra, someone such as Aegon instantly becomes a banner for her enemies to rally around, whether Aegon wished for it or not. It wouldn't really matter. The only way to ensure that this could never happen and to secure Rhaenyra's position indefinitely is to remove those potential threats. It might not be fair. It might be brutal. The Game of Thrones is a bloody one, and even in real-world history, situations such as this have happened time and time again. Look at Richard III and the Princes in the Tower, for example. So Otto is not wrong. Alicent should be worried and scared for her children, but not specifically because of Rhaenyra personally, but the men and women that surround her and act in her name, for her cause, and their own self-interests. If that still doesn't convince you that this is the real issue at hand, and what Otto is alluding to, then let's take a look at the main book series, as it provides two really good examples of this exact thing happening, and gets across the importance of this situation. At the end of Robert's rebellion, when the Lannisters take and sack King's Landing, Tywin Lannister effectively orders the deaths of Prince Rhaegar's young children, Aegon and Rhaenys, with their bodies presented publicly before the Iron Throne for all to see. Tywin did this for one simple reason: as long as Rhaegar had living children, there would be a banner any Targaryen loyalists at the time or in the future to rally behind and threaten Robert's hold on the Iron Throne. This actually comes to fruition in the main books, with young Griff and Jon Connington the minute they land in Westeros in the Stormlands. Many local houses flock to Aegon's cause, fueled by their Targaryen loyalties, and also the absolute chaos of the aftermath of the War of Five Kings, and the current situation in King's Landing is a perfect example of how someone, whether they want to or not, can become this figurehead. Thus, the throne would never have been secure as long as Rhaegar's children were living. This is also the reason why Viserys and Daenerys were also hidden away in Essos, and why they were hunted throughout their childhood, always on the run from Robert's assassins. As long as there was a living Targaryen claimant to the throne, be that Viserys, Daenerys, or even young Griff, they could become a banner for Targaryen loyalists to rally around. The throne would never be secure. When Robert Baratheon orders the death of Daenerys after her wedding to Khal Drogo, it was 100% the correct political move to make. That's why the whole small council backs it. Even someone with such a lack of interest in politics as Robert Baratheon could understand that the threat she posed just by existing. While Ned Stark takes a moralistic view on this, not wishing to murder effectively a child, it opens up a hell of a lot of risk leaving her alive. If the throne's enemies rally to Viserys or Daenerys, and they made it to Westeros, thousands would have died due to allowing the problem to exist in the first place. While making the morally correct decision is totally in character for Ned Stark, it does not mean it's the politically correct one. Yes, on his deathbed, Robert Baratheon tries to undo the command, but it doesn't take away from the fact, politically, it made sense. Would Rhaenyra have ordered the deaths of Alicent's children? I think on balance, probably not, but I don't think it's Rhaenyra herself that Otto is truly worried about here. He knows how this game works. He knows what would happen should Rhaenyra become queen. Someone, maybe someone around her, would make the hard, politically sensible decision to have Alicent and her children killed to secure Rhaenyra's position. And you know what? If the shoe was on the other foot, I think Otto would definitely make that call himself. That's why he's so keenly aware of the threat. But in reality, a lot of this feeds into the wider issues that allowed for the Dance of the Dragons to even take place. Viserys naming a daughter his heir over his true-born son was always going to lead to some situation and conflict. There were always going to be people unhappy with that decision. People who would thus rally their support behind Aegon, whether Aegon wanted it or not. Someone's life was always going to be put in huge danger, even if everyone was on board with Rhaenyra as heir. If Aegon was 100% happy and behind the idea and supported his sister's claim wholeheartedly, it would always pose a political risk, whether he or Rhaenyra liked it or not. This is ultimately why I find the Dance of the Dragons so interesting politically. There is no clear correct answer with so many different layers to it. The issue of Rhaenyra killing Alicent's children is only one of the complex issues that make up this whole conflict.